If we could please pay attention to Councilmember Jensen for the prayer to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, everyone. If you would all observe a moment of silence according to your own faith, and please keep in mind the tragedy that happened in Florida recently, and those families, survivors, and everyone down there dealing with just an incredibly terrible situation. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no proclamations this evening. However, we do have two presentations. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, our first presentation is the 2017 fourth quarter financial report, and Finance Director Nikki Lee will present that.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
By way of background, for those of you who have not experienced a quarterly report yet, this is a routine that we started a couple of years ago, and it's really meant to give you all a brief update of where we are on all of our major funds. It's a summary of a longer document which you all received on Friday. You should have a printed version as well, and it's posted online for everybody to see. So the presentation is again to give you the brief highlights. Another point that I would emphasize is tonight is maybe even a little briefer than other nights, mostly because being the fourth quarter of 2017, these numbers are still preliminary, so we won't actually finalize everything until our audit, which is ongoing over the next month, and we will present to you all final numbers in May with our 2017 CAFR that are certified figures. So that's really the point where we really take a deep dive into all 2017 year end and are really able to share some final numbers. So with that, first give you a brief overview of the major revenues in the city. So this is separated by type of fund. Of course, we have over 40 funds in the city, and this is a combination of all of those into one chart. Overall, the good news is that of all of our funds in the city, we are up 6% over 2016. So we always want to look at how we're doing against the prior year and make sure that we're on track. And again, on the revenue side, there are some final figures, some of the largest being sales tax and franchise fees that are still not final for last year. So there are some assumptions built in. On the expenditure side, again, summarized by type of fund with general fund on the left and then categorized over to the right. We are 3% over on our expenditures over where we were at this point in 2016. And in the general fund, we are 2% over where we were last year, which again was anticipated in the budget. So in all funds, we're still under budget. A little bit more on the general fund side, we are projecting that we will be adding a very, very minor amount to the fund balance, which is what we anticipated with some of the year-end transfers that were approved by you all at the end of 17. And we are meeting and maintaining our 15% fund balance. And then just a little more of a more detail into a couple of our other major funds. Water fund fees, so on the revenue side, are up 5% over last year, which was anticipated with the rate increase. And on the expenditure side, it's well under budget as we expected. On the stormwater side, we are up 1.2% over 2016 on revenues. And again, well under budget, so right where we expected to be on the stormwater side. And then finally in the wastewater fund, we are up 5.8% on revenue. And again, as explained before, under budget as we expected. And then finally, the risk funds. This is a combination of all of our risk funds, the major one being the health fund, property insurance, workers' comp. So in this fund, this is really a good news story over last year. Last year, especially on the health fund side, we experienced a lot of large claims and multiple claims throughout the city. This year in the health fund, we are tracking under where we were at this point last year, which of course resulted in a better rates for 18 than we would have anticipated. So this is a good news story. As you can see, unaudited figures were 11.9 million versus 14 million at this point last year. So we do have some claims that will roll into the next year, but overall a very, very good news story in our risk funds. And then finally, as always, you can find this entire report posted on our website, and then we also update all of our open government portals on a monthly and quarterly basis, so be sure to check those out.
Thank you, Nikki. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Lee or comments? Seeing none, I guess we move on to the second presentation, which is the Development and Growth Plan. City Manager?
Yes, tonight, Bill Finder, Planning Director, will present his fourth quarter update. Actually, it's end of year.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is our, I believe, our second time doing this before you. For those who weren't here, last year, Planning Department last year just started putting together a report to overview all the development activity and look at our permit trends, look at some of the growth management trends that we're keeping track of, and present those to you. And I think we did one at the end of last year, the third quarter. This will be the year end. This is also found online on the city's website and in a little more fuller detail with some text. So this is a summary of the year end report. And we'll start off with overall our permits, our building permits for the city dipped down last year by about 10%. We had 447 total residential and commercial permits. This is about the same, tracks the same decrease over a 5-year average. But when you drill a little deeper, you will see that when you look at the commercial side of things, commercial permits were up quite a bit as they have continued to trend up. We had 215 last year, which is about a 10% increase from the previous year and about a 16% increase for the 5-year average. So we continue to see an uptick in commercial activity. Likewise, that translates into a growing square footage or scale of permits approved. So you'll see some projects later on that kind of lend to this. We had a 41% increase in our square footage of permits approved last year. We're up to about over 4 million, 4.3 million square feet. Our 5-year average, that doubles our 5-year average. When you look at the value side, how much value is coming along with the permits approved, we're about the same as we were last year. We're a little bit lower. We're at 153 million last year in permits value approved. But over a 5-year average, we are still way up. We're 27% up. As you can see there, probably not since 2000, we're probably along the lines of a 2006 level in permit value. So a lot of value being created, a lot of square footage being created in the last year or two. Looking at the residential side, you will see that our number of units, our housing units in the city dipped by about 11% last year. We had 110 new units. That's both single family and multiple family that were created in the city. Over our 5-year average, and it's just a little bit under our 5-year average as well, which is 117. So not that far off in terms of what we've been doing. When we zoom out and expand our look at how we're doing compared countywide, this is one of our growth management measures. We should see that we're creating more units in the city than as a share of the entire county as we used to be. So this did go up. 47% of the units created last year in the county, 47% were in the city. This went up from about 45% last year, or 2 years ago, I guess. And then over a 5-year average, it's almost exactly where we were. So we would think that this percentage would tend to tick up a little bit more now with our growth management policies in place. In terms of planning for new growth, we keep our eye on how many primary vacant lots there are in the city. At the end of last year, we were at 1,100, just over 1,100, 1,108. These are vacant lots for single and two-family residential that were platted since 1970. That would leave us about 11 years of that type of use, 11 years of growth for that. And we really expect that inventory to go down somewhat before we begin planning and opening up new growth areas outside of our current city limits. Distribution-wise, it's pretty widely distributed last year. On this map, you can see the blue dots are residential, the red dots are commercial, the stars are our highest valued permits, and a lot of red downtown for commercial. The blues are, although they're distributed well, they tend to get concentrated on the fringe, as you would expect for some of the new subdivision development. As we look at the top 10 valued permits over the last year, to show you the top 5 of those, Reesers was by far our biggest square footage wise and value wise. This was a $22 million permit that is almost occupied, nearly completed. Next, we had the Cyrus Hotel. As you can see on the left there, that's what it looks like today. On the right will be hopefully what it looks like in the fall. So that was a $17.5 million investment. Next is the Federal Home Loan Bank up at 6th and Wanamaker on the Old Menninger campus. This was a $12.5 million project, and that as well is about to be completed. Lastly, the top 5, we have the Brewster Place Villas. This is what they look like right now. Hopefully they will look like this by the fall. There's 14 villas being built, 3-story villas, and that's totaled about $5.3 million. So if you look at our top 10 permit values per date, those 5 that I just showed you, well, it's really 4, but there was 2 Reesers, so those top 5, those were half our entire value for the year for the entire city. $77 million in those 5 permits that I showed you. So that's half of what we did for the entire city value-wise. So that speaks to, we did some really large projects last year that we may not normally see, or we haven't seen at least in 1 year at any given time. So it was a very good year, very busy year for us. And if you need, and so for the public, more information can be found on these reports out on Topeka.org planning, and just look under our resource and you'll see our DGM reports. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Have any of the permits been filed yet for the Wheatfield district that you're aware of?
They have not. We are working with them. We know they're on their way.
Excellent. So we could look for those in future years.
So yes, when I do this, in
Yeah.
fact, when I do this in a couple quarters, you'll see the permit that came in and the value that.
Excellent.
that
So
they
this
put
is
on it.
without that. That's
Correct.
We're doing incredibly well in this community then in terms of new construction. We need to keep it up, folks. Good work.
Any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The project out there on Southwest 6th Street, is that Security Benefit and Life? What exactly is that? That $12.5 million project?
On Southwest 6, oh, that's Federal Home Loan Bank office building. That's brand new construction. They moved out of the security benefit building and to create this brand new space on top of the hill overlooking 6th and Wanamaker.
Right. I thought that was Security Benefit and Life, but it's not, huh?
It is not. They actually, moved their office space out of security benefit to build this building and expand their operations.
So are they done, Bill, or they're still working on it?
They are, it's a good question.
They're in.
They work. Still working, there's probably some work to be done, but some are in, but they have not had a certificate. They don't have a final certificate of occupancy yet.
Okay, and then Grace Cathedral, what's that phase two, what's going on there?
I'd have to get back to you on that to know for sure.
And then
We may have somebody that,
Well, it's an addition on the back and a parking lot
on the back towards
towards Topeka High.
Topeka High? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the country club, they're doing additions and a new pool, or,
correct. Yes.
just need to know what's going on.
There you go. Councilwoman Hiller, you had your hand up?
Actually, I was just making sure you saw Councilwoman Clear, but in looking at these numbers, it's impressive to see the curve, but with Wheatfields coming on and then the Van Buren Street project and the Casson building, are they expecting to do all of that in 2019, Van Buren Casson? Because that's 84 units alone.
Right. That is so we'll see. They're still doing their due diligence, working on their plans with us. They hope, I think, to get it in this year, to get their starting construction by the end of the year.
That's right.
Yeah.
At least
But
on
it probably
some-
would- so we'll probably should have a permit, hopefully by the end of the year to show.
It'll be interesting next year. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Councilman Lesser?
No, I go to Grace Cathedral, so I was just going to answer Sylvia's question there, but Karen jumped in, so.
And it was highly contested long ago, so it was good that it went smoothly.
Mr. Fyander, quick question. I saw that, like you said, the development for residential was happening in the fringes. Is there anything that we can be doing to incentivize developers to take a look at the houses that we have in our core? I know that we have our land use and growth management plan, or LUNGUMP, and I know that we're talking about that, but what are we doing to assist that, and is there anything else that we should be looking at from the policy perspective?
Your Honor, what we have been doing is, as we meet with developers, we don't meet with a lot of new housing developers, I will just say it, because you usually have a builder in a certain subdivision. So what we need to be doing is getting a different, I guess, so the Van Buren School, for instance, is in that area that you speak of. So a renovation, a repurposing of buildings, that is the sort of thing that, I mean, we actively marketed that to get somebody in. Now, that was because the city owned it. In terms of our policies and having the incentives for the neighborhood revitalization program, which is one incentive, housing-wise, you can see by the numbers, it is down all over. So trying to do more, we're trying to look at, are people doing, does that mean if there's not a more new construction, do we see more rehabilitation going on? That is harder to track because not all of that needs permits. That comes back in property values when people sell properties. So I don't know that my numbers will track the sort of activity we hope to be seeing unless we begin to track that overall in our health maps and see property values start to rise. Policy perspective, though, again, continuing to improve with those neighborhood plans, with the infrastructure plans, reinvesting in the core area, the downtown itself, is a huge policy jump that will then lead to surrounding areas following. So I think it's a multifaceted question or answer to your question.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Councilwoman Hiller?
Following up on that, we did have some subdivisions that really sort of went fallow during the economic downturn. And I did look through this online. I don't see it on the slide, but I think in the residential permit list that you had, there was one in Lawrence Bay, one maybe in Horseshoe Bend. It seemed like there were 3 different subdivisions at least where we had not had activity for a while, where I assume looked like just one home, but are we starting to see some permits in those?
Yeah, if you look at the monthly reports, I don't have it like in December, I think it was in November. In our top 10, 3 or 4 of those each month were houses, because they were fairly expensive houses. You had some in McFarland Farms, you had some in Rockfire, you had some in out at Miller's Reserve. So you do, yes, so of that 1,100 lots that I showed you that we still have an inventory on, you are seeing some built. It's just the absorption is just, obviously needs to be higher, but you are seeing things built in those subdivisions. And so, yes, to answer your question,
Great,
we
thank you.
are.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. Bill, this is great. What would be helpful to me is like the expected time that this is to be completed, somewhere in here, as opposed to going back to the website,
Okay.
if you know that,
The time to complete the building?
the project.
Which bill? Oh, okay, so I can bring forth the expected timeline for completion for those projects that I should, sure.
I mean, I know research has been going on
It's-
for quite a while, and it's
Sure.
looking good, but I don't know about Insight or anything like
Got it.
that. And then, some of the other,
We can do that.
that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Your Honor. Bill, thank you for the report. Sure. I have a question, and I hope you or some of my colleagues here have an answer. Is there an active role for our real estate, our realtors here in Topeka to take or play in trying to promote or make these vacant properties a primary choice, or bring it to the attention of builders? Is there something they can do to help promote those properties?
Councilman Padilla, we reach out, or they reach out to us, and we do go out to realtor groups all the time, which we get to present the incentives that we have in the core for the neighborhood revitalization, but we also talk about our overall vision and that the fact that we're trying to reinvest and grow where we are and get some of these infill projects to spring up more. So I have a good relationship with the head of the realtors, and she actually tries to pull us in more and more into these type of conversations and these meetings, so that the realtors do understand, hey, we're very supportive of opportunities where we have infill opportunities, or repurposing of building opportunities, and that we're not always looking to extend horizontally on our fringes. I think that is getting across. Again, it's up to a lot of the market forces as to whether any of that takes hold sometimes, and we are seeing more smaller subdivisions that come in the city to create those new infill opportunities that you may not see yet. So we're thinking it's getting through, but we keep reinforcing as we can.
Good, well, I commend you for the effort, and I would encourage you to continue to do that. I think that would be helpful if we can get that communication on a regular basis so that they see our vision and see how they can help us in achieving that.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the body? Seeing none, we now proceed to the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Jensen.
Present.
Mays.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Lesser.
We move forward to item number 4, appointments. If the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Darcella Goodman to the Topeka Human Relations Commission to fill an unexpired term ending February 1, 2020. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Deborah Swank to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a term ending March 1, 2020.
What is the council's pleasure? Mr. Cohen moved, Councilman Cohen moves. Deputy Mayor seconds. Are there any comments? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I thought we already voted for Deborah Swank to be on the Sustainability Board. I thought that came before us about a month ago.
You know, she was here.
She was here. She stood
was?
up, yeah.
Oh, you're right. Well, guess it can't hurt to do it twice.
Okay. That means she get a longer term or what?
Thank you for the comment. We will absolutely verify this, and like Councilwoman Hiller said, I don't think there is no harm in revoting it.
Oh, I see, because they pushed it down.
No, it's, okay, so at this point in time, will we proceed with the vote? The mayor does not vote. Oh, before we go into voting, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Well, if we find out, go back and search and we find out that she is, it's gonna be a different date, I'm sure. So we would need to see how we would handle that. I guess come back and see,
Okay, Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have that, but I have first a board appointment to the Topeka Human Relations Commission, is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's Darcella.
okay. And the next one was Deborah Schwank, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I guess let's look into it and get back with us to see, to make sure we don't, because if it's a different date, we would need to know that.
So are you recommending a friendly amendment that we approve Darcella Goodman, her reappointment, and then we would leave Ms. Swank out for,
No, I'd like to
To
go ahead and
review?
vote on both of them, but I'd like for us to look and see if, I'm sure she was, and so we'd have to look at the dates, because that means she'd have two different expiration dates.
Councilwoman Heller.
Perhaps the motion could propose an amendment to authorize the staff to adjust the term if needed. That work?
I mean, I'd hate for us to come back if she has, but I
Absolutely.
remember her being here.
I would second that.
You would second the friendly amendment? Okay, so now we have the amendment for the approval. If we all would vote, the mayor does not vote.
We have 9 yes.
9 voting yes, the appointments are approved. For the amendment, exactly. So now at this point in time, we make the vote for the approval. Is there a motion? There was already a motion. So at this point in time, we go ahead and we vote. Okay.
We have 9 yes.
9 have been voting yes. Now the motion is approved with the understanding that we will look at the dates to ensure that nothing changes if there was a prior approval for Ms. Swank. We now move into the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A are minutes of the regular meeting of February 13, 2018, and there are no applications.
What is the pleasure of the body? Deputy Mayor,
Move to approve.
move to approval. Do we have a second? Second, Councilmember Cohen. Are there questions or comments with regards to the minutes? Seeing none, we proceed to the voting.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. We now move to the action items. Item A, resolution, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution to establish a policy for tax increment financing, TIF, economic development incentives in the city of Topeka.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body, tonight I want to make a few comments regarding the TIP policy. The proposed TIP policy is a good, important document for us to craft and approve. The staff pulled together this document based on examples from other parts of the state other TIF policies. We've worked with our financial advisor, who works with many other communities across Kansas and in other states to review the policy and consider it. He supports this policy as we've crafted it. I feel it's broad enough and not restrictive. The policy may be somewhat specific, but the way we've created it, but I feel that's potentially beneficial to providing good guidance to a developer as they consider our community for their investment. The policy can be deviated from if needed, and that is clearly stated in the policy. If you read through the information that's provided, you can tell that it provides the guidance, but at the very end, it states that it can be deviated from. We obviously sought input from Greater Topeka Partnership, and they contacted a couple of developers. We received one that supported the document as it was presented, and one that expressed concerns. Tonight, we provided a response to you regarding some of their concerns. Obviously, if there are concerns of the governing body regarding approving this tonight, we would like to know about them and try and answer them, provide the information. However, if it's not to be considered tonight, and there are really two options that you have, you can defer consideration of the policy to discuss potential changes we can, as staff, discuss those changes with developers, with the information they provided, other governing body members, and continue to look at other examples that are throughout the state. Or you could refer it for consideration to a city council committee for discussion, have discussions with developers and staff, and then eventually bring it back to the governing body for consideration. However, we stand for questions tonight if you have them regarding the policy. However, we're prepared to support you. The issue that we have, we know this policy needs to be created, and we feel like we've done that, providing you the information. However, we feel it's very paramount to the council that they support this policy as well, because this is a guiding policy that shows how we consider to do business within the community, and that information is important because it'll be known throughout the state as we look at further development in the community. So that's my comments.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Does the body have any questions for the city manager or for the staff? Councilmember Emerson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't really have a question for staff, but I have had extensive conversations with staff, and just this week, actually just yesterday, a major developer approached me and told me that while they really appreciate the policy and they're supportive of having a policy, they have a number of concerns. And a lot of us, several of us, I guess, were in attendance several weeks ago at the Greater Topeka Partnership Dinner. And at that, Mark Ruel from Westar got up and he spoke about the need for growth in our community and our economy and how important that is. Because as our economy, as our tax base grows, the share each of us has to pay goes down. So I think this is one of the most important things that we will consider, because growth will solve a lot of problems in a community. And the opposite of growth, shrinking, will create a lot of problems. So it would be my wish that we refer this to a committee, probably the Policy and Finance Committee, so that we can consider this and get the input of the developers, the people that are going to use this policy. Again, I think this is a great first start, but this is such a critical thing. I mean, there's things this year, last year, if Deputy Mayor will forgive me, we spent a lot of time getting right just the thing about potbelly pigs. And I appreciate we want to get things right. So I don't think discussing this one week, getting a response the next week, and then adopting something quickly is in our interest. So I would make a motion to refer this to the Policy and Finance Committee for those reasons.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion with regards to the motion and the second? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I would also support that. I mean, I think this is the opportunity for us as a community to reach out to the developers and say, look, we want to be partners in all of this, and we want to come to the table and craft a document that will work for our citizens' benefits and for our developers' benefits. And I think what the staff has put together is a fantastic first start. I love the fact that you pulled in some of the premier developers in the city and worked with them on creating this. And I'd love to see everybody have the chance to weigh in with that. So I will absolutely support sending this, but I wanted to thank the staff for having the foresight to say, you know what, we need this policy. We need to be open for business. And I think this is just an example of how we show our region that Topeka is ready to partner and ready to build things. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. I support that as well, in that I really want to hear, you all know me, but I think it's really healthy for us to tear apart something, and particularly to hear it vetted by the developers, so that if there's something we've missed or we need to understand what the, kind of the equal and opposite reaction might be. I'm just now glancing through this, and, the committee will get a chance to read, I assume, those communications directly from Polsinelli, as well as the other developers and others that may want to weigh in. So I think that's wise. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we proceed with the voting. Oh, we have public comment before we go into the vote. Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
Evening, good everybody. Joseph Ledbetter, I'm attorney here in Topeka. I did have a developer contact me late this afternoon, asked me to at least come down and make some points about this. And basically, I support the motion, and I know he would too. And I think it's very important to engage these developers. If nothing else, at least you hear their ideas, and you may be able to craft not only a better resolution or a better agreement, but actually maybe engage them and would you like to do some business here? The one that I'm talking about has done a lot of business in this town, but he feels like Topeka has been kind of shut to business for a while to developers, and he'd like to see that reopened and that mindset to be open to the developers and helping turn the city forward. And so I support the motion and hope you do put this in a committee and give the developers some time to make their comments known. And thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, we now proceed with the voting.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, the motion passes. The TIF policy will be passed on to the Policy and Finance Committee. We now move on to item B, suspension of the governing body rules, if the clerk would read. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
You might just mention who's on the Policy and Finance Committee so that the folks who want to provide input on this specific policy would know who to contact.
Absolutely. Deputy Mayor, yes, Councilman Emerson, Councilman Cohen, and Councilwoman Hiller are in the Policy and Finance Committee. Thank you. Point well taken. Now we proceed with item B.
B is suspension of governing body rules to allow motion for reconsideration of ordinance number 20109, Aqua Blast Laundry rezoning, and reconsideration of ordinance number 20109.
City Manager.
The staff is bringing this back at the request of, for reconsideration.
Okay, at this point in time, we will recognize Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to suspend the governing rules to allow reconsideration of ordinance 20109, which passed January 2nd, 2018.
Deputy Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and to bring back an item that have been voted in the past. So are there any comments or discussion before we proceed with Councilman Cohen?
I'd just like to know why we're bringing this back. Typically, things like this don't happen. Legitimate question, I think.
Absolutely. Councilman Lesser.
Madam Mayor, I'm interested in the suspension of the rules so we can have a discussion on the issue. It's my opinion that to no fault of anyone's, that the council did not have all the adequate information needed when it was voted on in December. I first want to state I don't believe that this is anyone's fault. I think it is a loophole that we have kind of in the process. We as a council are a quasi-judicial position for these type of decisions, and we normally base our decisions on the recommendations we receive from the Planning Commission and the due diligence of which they have performed. When the council took the action to amend the recommendation to a 10 o'clock closing, it was done so without any input as to how that amendment would affect the project and the financial viability of it. We have a businessman here who's going to invest $2 million in our community without receiving any city incentives. His investment will generate roughly $40,000 in property tax and $50,000 in sales tax revenue. It seems to me having a discussion basically to answer questions, and we can ask him his position on why the 10 o'clock closing and how it affects the financial viability of his project. I think it's warranted. My hope is we can balance both the interests of both the residents as well as the business owner, and no different than as we're talking about TIF, the TIF district. We need to make sure that people know that Topeka is open for business. The business owner is willing to concede from his 24-hour request. He's willing to use midnight as a closing time, and I think we should hear him out as to why the closing time of 10 o'clock will not work for his business.
Thank you, Councilman Lesser. Councilman Cohen.
Is he here?
Yes.
Is he signed up to speak?
I have David Hines and Gary Lucas.
Mr. Tracy Chamberlain, I thought he was on the list.
to speak.
Sure.
Yeah,
I am here, but I didn't know I needed to sign up. I'm sorry.
we can invite him.
If I could get 5 minutes, that would be great.
I just have a question for legal. Ms. Robertson, in order for us to invite the gentleman to speak, would we have to suspend the rules?
I don't believe so. I think if he has information that pertains to the subject matter at hand, that you're fully entitled to call him up and allow him to speak on the matter.
Councilman Cohen, is that your desire?
I'm sorry.
You had asked if we could bring up the owner, and I'm just confirming with legal that we were able to do so. Would you like to call up the owner?
Yes, let's please do.
Please, thank you. Sir, if you could please step up to the podium.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for letting me.
Sir, excuse me, I'm sorry, if you would not mind speaking your name and the business that you're representing.
Okay, I'm Tracy Chamberlain, and I'm representing the Aqua Glass Laundromat. I will be the owner of that business. So, again, I'd like to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to speak to you for just a few minutes. First of all, I want to, explain to you how we got here. 8 years ago, my wife and I decided that we wanted to buy a laundromat in Wichita, Kansas. And we thought, we're just going to buy one of them. And long story short, we're on our 5th laundromat right now. And we've kind of decided that this is what we want to do for retirement. We both worked in the aircraft industry for 30 years, and she's still working at Spirit Aerosystems, and I'm taking care of the businesses. But a little over 4 years ago, we bought a small laundromat here in Topeka. It's over off of 17th and Adams. And it was one of those deals where somebody sent us some information. We looked at it. I drove up here. The place was closed. I think you guys are familiar with the Hudson Crossing area, kind of the troubles that they had over there. I wasn't really familiar with all that when I bought it. But anyhow, we bought it. We opened it up. It's been a successful business for us. We're leasing the property. Lease runs up this year. We'd have some problems with the people that was leasing the property from, and I wanted to stay in the Topeka market. So my only option, I felt like my only option was to see if I could find a viable place here in town to build a laundromat and stay here. We've got really good people that work for us. They take care of our business for us. We don't have to come down here very often. We keep an eye on it. The guy every day is reporting to me what's going on, and I want to help them out. And I just think there's a place for a good laundromat here in town. We've got, like I said, we've got 4 of them in Wichita, and they're just really, really nice laundromats. So if you guys would ever take the time to go out there and pull up the Spring Clean laundromats in Wichita and look at them, they're not your typical laundromats. The one that we're modeling after here in Topeka is one that we have on North Woodlawn. It's going to be 12,000 square feet. We're going to invest a lot of money in it. It's going to be very, very nice. It's going to be all brick. It's going to be a beautiful building. It's carpeted. I mean, it's just going to be a great place for you to do your laundry. It's not going to be your typical laundromat. And I know that's a concern for some people in the neighborhood. They're worried about a laundromat and stuff like that. But 3 of our 4 laundromats that we have in Wichita are in residential areas. We just don't have any problems with it. We just don't. We don't allow that stuff to go. It wouldn't be good for our business. I mean, so we don't let that happen. We'll be having an attendant there every hour that we're open. So we just don't let stuff like that go on. And it's important for you guys to know that, because if we had bad things happen in our business, it just wouldn't be successful. And when we first got into this, we bought this property over here off of Westport. We knew we had to go get a rezoning for a PUD.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. And anyway, long story short, we bought the property thinking that there'd be no problems. We really wanted it to be a 24-hour operation, but if we can do some kind of a compromise, would be willing to do that. But 10 o'clock will not work for us. It just will not produce enough revenue for us. You can figure that every hour that we're not open, it's going to cost us at least $100. So if you're shutting it down at 10 versus 12, that's $200 a day. Doesn't seem like much. If you start adding 365 days a year, you know, you're looking at $70,000, $80,000 of gross revenue. And it's just hugely important for our business. We cannot do it at 10 o'clock. It just will not work. Well, I mean, we're cutting it close for midnight, to be honest with you. We were really open for 2. But if we can make a little compromise and do 12, and maybe sometime down the road, you guys see that we run a respectable and honest business and we keep it clean and you know, free of other stuff, you know, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you for wrapping up your comments. And you do have, if you could please stay, because the council members do have the opportunity to ask you any questions at this point in time.
Mayor DeLisa?
Yes.
I think at this point, I think it was important for the gentleman to come up and provide comment just so folks could determine whether or not they wish to suspend the rules. I think you should go ahead at this point in time and determine if you want to do that, and then vote on whether or not you wish to reconsider. Then you can hear additional information and answer questions from the body.
Thank you. So at this point in time, we have heard from our from the potential business owner. It's time for us to have a vote. The vote would be to reconsider, rescinding the motion, suspending the rules.
Okay. We have 9 yes, Ms. Ortiz voting no.
9 having voting yes, we now enter discussion.
You need to do the motion to reconsider, whether or not you want to reconsider.
Okay.
That motion needs to be made by an individual who is...
Those are the prevailing side.
Correct.
To suspend the rules. You were on the prevailing side, Deputy Mayor?
I believe I was.
Okay, so
So
Deputy
moved.
Mayor makes the motion. Do we have a second? Second. Councilman Emerson has a second. So at this point, we are in the process of voting. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. I would like to know when the rules change that you have to reconsider before the meeting is out. I would like to know when that has changed, because it's always been that the person has to, on the prevailing side, has to do it before the meeting is over. And the meeting has been over. And so I would like to know when that has changed.
That hasn't changed, Councilmember Ortiz. What we did was suspend the rules because the motion to reconsider stays, you can't reconsider inside of 6 months. So what had to take place was what we did just now, and that was to suspend the rules so that we can allow a reconsideration inside of the 6-month period of time. So that's what you all are voting on now, whether or not you want to.
But then now it has to be done by
Reconsider.
the prevailing, person that's prevailed
Correct.
on the prevailing side?
Correct.
But that was only so they could change their vote, correct? So he can't vote the same way. You do understand that, right?
Yeah,
No. That was my understanding.
no. It just has to be a member of the prevailing side, and that would have been Councilmember Ortiz, Emerson, Jensen, or Cohen. Have to make the motion. The second does not have to be made by a member of the prevailing side. That can be made by anyone on the body.
I mean, when he votes, you can't vote the same way.
Yeah, you can vote on this one whichever way you wish.
Because it's by the person on the prevailing side that brings it back. If it was,
I would be happy to abstain if you would like me to.
no.
Yeah. I think there's just a mix-up. No, we're good proceeding this.
Are we in good procedural
Yes.
standing?
We've got a motion by Councilmember Emerson.
No, Jensen.
Seconded by Emerson.
Second by
Oh,
Emerson.
no, okay, that's good.
Okay, so are we ready for a vote? We know what we're voting for? Okay. If the attorney could please read.
Yes, the motion would be to reconsider ordinance number 20109.
Okay, so that everybody that's at home, because we're doing procedure after procedure, at this point in time, first we suspended our rules, and now we're voting for reconsideration of this item. So, we proceed with the voting. Do we have any comments or questions? No?
Well, but this is still just to open
Yeah,
up.
this is just to open it up.
This is the second procedural.
Right.
Right, we have 8 yes, Ms. Ortiz and Mr. Padilla voting no.
Okay, so now we are in the place that, so the motion passes. The item is now able to be reconsidered. So now if we have any questions of the business owner, I think that this would be the appropriate time to follow through with those questions. Mr. Padilla, Councilman Padilla.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Chamberlain, thank you for coming before us.
Thank you.
I was asking a question earlier. When this came before the body the first time, I was not a member of the council. And one of the questions I had was if the business owner was asking us for some consideration to help him open a business, would he have not appeared here to speak before this body and give us information, allow us to ask questions? And I was informed that you were here, but you were unable to make the presentation because either you weren't aware that you could do that. So I think that's part of the confusion on my part, because I thought if you had all the information the first time around, you should have stayed with what the decision was that the previous council had made. But I understand now that there's more information. I'd like to ask one question. I know there's a concern from the residents around that area about the operation, a number of different things, noises, whatever. And I want to ask something that maybe you have already considered. Understanding that they have those concerns, have you, for this location, planned to install surveillance equipment or anything like that that might make it undesirable for people who would come there to cause you any issue, and maybe help convince the residents in that area that you're taking every step you can to make that clean, viable, safe location for a business?
We have surveillance in every one of our laundromats, inside and out.
Okay.
So they will catch everything surrounding on the outside and on the inside.
Okay. I'm sure you're aware of the concept of CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, and anything you can do to incorporate those ideas in your property, I think will help allay some of those concerns and fears. And thank you very much for coming today.
Just for a side note on that, we've spent about 12 hours over the last 2 days working with the FBI on that lost child in Wichita, because our cameras catch some of the intersection where they think the child might have been at. So that's just kind of the stuff that you might see once in a while, but we have very high security, high definition cameras inside and out.
I commend you for being a good citizen there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Clear.
So am I to understand that if it isn't approved to go past, you said now midnight, that you will not be able to do this? You'll have to...
Man, we put our numbers to it, and we just don't believe that we can feel that we can invest $2 million and make it work.
The mat that was on 17th Street, was it open 24 hours? What was it open?
It is not open.
What was...
Part of the reason with that is that one, the store isn't that big, and two, the location where it's at is not conducive to opening too late. You know, there's a gas station, a liquor store, and we just didn't feel like that was probably the best place to be open later.
And what were those hours?
We close at 10 o'clock at that place.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the gentleman? Councilwoman Hiller.
I just wanted to clarify services, because we did get some planning commission and we got some input from folks who said that they personally had their own washing facilities right there, yet there are plenty close by who don't. And we also got some testimony from people who live in the complexes where the objections have come from, that they're eager to have it there and they would use it. I tried to read everything that we got. Will this particular facility also offer to do laundry for people?
Yes, we will have a drop-off service.
I thought so. So that's an additional service, maybe, I don't recall having been discussed. But
Yeah, we will have a
it
drop-off
makes a
service in
difference.
there.
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for your interest in our community. You know, I understand you can take your business and go wherever you like, because people everywhere have laundry that needs to be done. And I just want to thank you for coming to Topeka and being willing to stay in our community and work with us to come up with a solution that will enable you to make a living, make a profit, at the same time work with us to overcome fears of folks around there, whether they're founded or unfounded. I think this is a great example of how we can work with businesses so that everybody, wins. And I appreciate you coming back.
Well, thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Well, Deputy Mayor, not everybody wins, because we're going to have a big empty building in District 3. Huge empty building on District 3. You know, and it is in an area that needs to close at 10 o'clock, but there's a lot of areas in Topeka that need to close at 10 o'clock. Just because other establishments are open doesn't make it safe. So.
Deputy Mayor.
If I could respond, I think that is an excellent opportunity for somebody else to come in that can make it work.
I know that we have not made a motion. If we don't have any other questions for the gentleman, there are two individuals that are signed up for public comment as well, and I want to make sure that they also have the opportunity to speak. Councilwoman Clear.
Since this says 2 o'clock, are we changing this to midnight then?
I think, can I answer that?
No? No, it was this paper.
Well, could we, I'm going to ask for the individual to please speak.
When I originally sent out the letter that you all got, I'd asked for 2 o'clock a.m. We just felt like 2 a.m. was a good number. We know there was some businesses that were fairly close to that area that closed at 2 a.m. We thought we had a viable argument for 2 a.m. As you know, we wanted 24 hours. And so we felt like a compromise to 2 a.m. would be fairly good for us. And if we closed at 2 a.m., we'd be able to leave our attendant inside and do the stuff that they normally do on the night shift from midnight to 6 a.m. That's clean the carpets and that type of stuff. We got, carpet clean and we cleaned the linen out of the dryers when they're not very busy and stuff like that. And we just felt like, if we could stay open till 2, we could justify keeping an attendant there for additional 4 hours to do that stuff with no revenue coming in. So I was asked if I would consider midnight. And we put our financials down, and we think that we have a chance of making that work. we do have hopes that if we prove to you guys that we run a good, clean business and the neighbors aren't scared of us anymore, and we can show you that we want to be part of the community and that type of stuff, that maybe sometime down the road, maybe we can extend those hours, which would be great for us. But at this point in time, we would consider doing it till, if we could leave our doors open until midnight, which means there could possibly be customers in there till 1 a.m. because it will take them a while to do their laundry.
So, back to my question. So on this paper that says 2, it should say then midnight.
For our motion.
We're waiting to actually get the, sorry, no, I'm doing it. We're waiting to actually get the final motion from a council member on
Okay.
what the amendment would be. She's made notations in documents that she has for the amendment that will say 12 a.m. next day.
Okay.
And so, once the final motion is made by council, second is presided, then we will pass the documents.
I just want to make sure this didn't
Yep,
lock
you're
us
right.
into anything.
Very good catch. Yes, that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have 2 individuals signed up for public comments, so before we go into any motions, I would like for those individuals to have the opportunity to speak. First one signed up to speak is Mr. David Hines. Okay.
I can still get up and visit.
If you could please step up to the podium, please.
Hi, my name's David Hines. I have a local business here in Topeka. Also own several rental properties. Familiar with the location that he's looking at putting his laundromat in. Several of the people that I have that have rental properties, some have laundry washers and dryers, some don't. So looking at other laundromats in the area, I know there's different times that some do open, some close at midnight. I mean, so I've seen different hours on different laundromats in the area. So some of the people have expressed concern, they work at the hospital. You know, they don't get off till midnight. They don't get up till 2 in the morning. So there's different people at different time frames. So I'm just in support of at least having him open until midnight. I think it's a good neighborhood. I think it's a good business. Gentleman's coming in from out of town, so putting money into the district or, into the area. I think it's I just support him. I support you guys putting that motion to where he can stay open until midnight. So that was it.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Gary Lucas.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Gary Lucas. I've been a resident here in Topeka since 1995. I've known Tracy Chamberlain for a long time. We both grew up in southwest Kansas. I'm from Sublette and he's from Spearville. I don't know if you know this, Tracy didn't toot his own horn, but in 2017, he was recognized as a Small Business Excellence Award in the city of Wichita with his laundromats. You probably haven't had the opportunity to see his laundromats in Wichita, but they're not your typical laundromat. They're very well run. Tracy's a very good person. Like I said, I've known him for a long time. I'm a local businessman. I'm a State Farm agent here in town. I own a piece of property here in town. We've raised our kids here in Topeka, and Tracy's, has done business here for a few years leasing a property, and now he wants to own his own property. So we're always looking for tax revenue to help with our streets, help with our sidewalks, help in our city. So I hope you can consider that. One thing, Tracy, if you close it at 10 o'clock, then, those people can't get in there sometimes late enough to get their laundry done. 10 o'clock, you're looking at, shutting people away at 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, So hopefully you'll reconsider this, and we'll have another investor in the city of Topeka that'll come here and invest, a couple $1 million. So thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments. So we have heard the public comments and the business owner. At this time, I would ask if the council has any questions. Yes, Councilman Cohen.
I have a question. Since this is one that's coming back, why didn't it come back in its original form of 24 hours? And then we go ahead and talk about different hours if that's what we were going to do. Why didn't it come back originally at 24 hours?
I think, Councilmember Cohen, that the recommendation of the Planning Commission was a 24-hour operation, and then the council amended that time frame. And then I believe when Councilmember Lesser spoke with the individuals involved, they had talked about the 2 a.m. time frame, and now we're speaking of 12. So I think that's just what the discussions were. I'm not privy to what happened there.
Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, that's correct. I think basically what it came down to was having a compromise and, being sensitive to some of the wishes of the residents that did not want a 24-hour operation, and then coming to a compromise of how can this, then 2 o'clock came, and well, then it really came, what time closing can you still be viable and financially, take a risk of making a $2 million investment in the community without taking a loss.
Councilwoman Clear.
So we have already approved this for 10 o'clock, correct?
Correct.
So now we're coming back. And he has a laundromat that was open till 10. But now for some reason, he can't make this one, just can't make this viable if he closes before 12. And I don't understand that. If he was making it at 10 o'clock, how now it's so detrimental that he's open till midnight?
Councilman Lesser?
I can answer that from a business perspective. Currently, right now, 2 points. The area at this point in time where the other laundromat is not located is not an area, unfortunately, at this point in time where we would want to be open at that past that hour. The other piece is from a business perspective of a cash flow. He's leasing that property over there. He did not own that. So when you're making a capital investment such as this and you have to cash flow it and the principal and the interest on that, it's different than an overhead of renting a property and so forth. And I know that comes into play in regards to the viability of 10 o'clock versus 24 hours. I think probably if he felt that he could be open there 24 hours, I think he probably would have over on the location. But unfortunately, we've had variety of different crimes that have occurred right there at that location. That makes sense. I know.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
I was just going to follow up on the comments that he had. Basically, it's a leasing space versus building brand new space. There's going to be significantly larger payment on that due every month, which would be why he would need extra revenue.
Any other comments, questions, or are we ready for a motion? Councilwoman Hiller.
I'll just throw in a couple things. I think I mentioned when we considered it the first time, I did go out to East Topeka. I mean, there haven't been any problems in that laundromat. That general area has had some issues, but not the laundromat. And it was clean and bright and in very good condition. So I didn't travel to Wichita, but that one I was very impressed with. I understand, people with their work schedules, people with evening meetings. And I know when I was raising kids, I didn't come up for air till 10 o'clock. So if I was going to get the laundry done or was going to do something, was going to need to, we called ourselves the late night Dylan shoppers who would show up at 10 or after to get groceries and do things like that. So I understand the viability from the customer side of needing that opportunity. So I supported it before. I appreciate the process that people have gone through. Reconsidering our motion, I got a little bit of feedback of people concerned that we would suspend our rules ever. And I do think it's a really big thing that we've chosen to do that. For me, we weren't able to hear him because we were still in that quasi-judicial process. And the idea that came out of this group that night was the 10 o'clock, which is very unusual in a zoning case to put time limits on a developer. So the fact that people gave it some more thought and some more conversation and wanted to consider it again made me comfortable with that rare exception that we would look at it tonight as well. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments, questions, or do we have a motion at this point? Councilman Lesser.
Madam Mayor, I would move to amend the time restriction set out in ordinance 20109 by changing the closing time from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock a.m., which would limit the hours of operation to no sooner than 6 a.m. and closing no later than 12 o'clock a.m. the next day.
Do we have a second? Deputy Mayor seconds. Any further comment on the issue? Questions? Seeing none, we proceed with the voting.
We've got some copies coming around.
Mayor, I'm just circulating some copies of what the amendment would look like in the body of the ordinance, so everyone can see.
Thank you.
Just for some clarity before you
And again, for everybody that's watching at home, this has been a complicated, rescinding motion. So again, the explanation of where we're at right now, we have suspended, we are reconsidering, and now there's a motion that we could extend the hours of operation from 10 o'clock, which was the initial hours of operation, to midnight now for the establishment. We proceed with the vote.
6.
Okay, we have 7 yes, Ms. Clear and Ortiz voting no.
Seven having voting yes, the motion passes. The hours have been extended from 10 o'clock till midnight. We now move on to item C, approval of the governing body rules and procedures, if the clerk would read.
C is approval of the governing body rules and procedures. And the handout is marked as 6A and it should be 6C. So there's a handout for you guys that's got the memo on the top and the governing body rules red line.
Okay, the clerk is indicating that we have a memo that has been circulated and it's coded wrong.
Yeah, it says 6A, it should say 6C.
It says 6A, but it is actually 6C. City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, City Attorney Robertson will cover the last 4 notations for amendments to the governing body rules.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. As you know, we've been discussing this for a while, and we have 4 remaining issues that were kind of outstanding. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll just walk through those, and if you could use the little packet of information that Brenda just referred to, that would probably be very helpful. The first proposed revision would be on page 7 of that red line document. It would be lines 239 to 240. And this was a very simple amendment, just adding the highlighted language. Oh, I don't think I highlighted that, so I take that back. Elaboration a little bit on the items that are in parentheses. I think before it said how budget amendments will be handled, and this broadens the language, so now it says, i.e. budget meetings, and how budget amendments will be handled in special public hearings. So just added a little bit more to that, so it could give you a little bit more flexibility on adoption of administrative rules to cover those. The second would be at the bottom of that same page, page 7. Starts at line 258, and this is the amendment that we talked about, that Councilmember Ortiz had presented regarding the election of the deputy mayor. We talked about it a little bit. It basically codifies the past practice that the council's engaged in, and that is giving some preference to the folks who have served the longest in conjunction with those who have not served in the deputy mayor capacity prior. As long as they're interested in doing it. It does not mandate that certain people be voted upon. You'll use the same ballot that you always use with regard to electing folks with all of the members listed. It just gives preference to those folks. And And I don't know if Councilmember Ortiz would like to elaborate on that anymore, or, okay, good deal. So that's the second one. The third one is on pages, it starts on page 8, line 310 to 316. This talks about the preparation and circulation of agenda items, and specifically the added language deals with attachments to the agenda, and when they're attached and in what manner they're attached. The way that the proposed amendment reads is that along with the final version of any supporting documents related to items included as part of the final agenda, and all available supporting documents related to items included as part of the preliminary agenda, provided, however, that no technical difficulties would prevent this from occurring. So basically, for the final agenda, you have to have all the final documents attached. And for the preliminary agenda, you need to have every document that you have available attached. At that point in time, I think that's about 11 days in advance, the preliminary agenda. So that's the third. And then the final one is on page 15. And we discussed this on January 16th, and some of the language has been changed to hopefully address some concerns expressed by Councilmember Clear. Right now, it states that the committee needs to act within 90 days or come back and report on where they are. But we've added in language that would allow the governing body to set a deadline prior to the 90-day period if they would like to move it along or get reports more routinely. So those are the four, and I don't know how you'd like to handle it. We could vote on all of those at once or have discussion on each individually, however the body wants to do it.
So at this point, I would like to see if there's any comments. Yes, Councilman Lesser.
I didn't have a comment. I was going to make a motion.
Oh, well, you would like to make a motion? Okay, your motion?
In the issuance of time, just to see where everyone stands, I think it would maybe make sense if I'd like to make a motion to approve the amendments as submitted in whole.
So the February 20th version.
Yes.
Do we have a second, and Councilwoman Clear, are there any comments or questions? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. I appreciate, again, all the work that staff has done and that the council has done on this. I have two concerns. One, the amendment proposed of the package that we were looking at up to last week. There's still one that gives me pause. I've spent some time with the city manager and city attorney about it, and that would be the one that's on page 8 from lines basically 309 to 316 about the agendas and the attachments being on the agendas. I feel very strongly that we need to have the full population of attachments when the preliminary agenda is posted, so that the public and the council members can see them all and can consider those items, can vet them with whoever they need to vet them with staff if they have questions and so on. And this language does not require that. And in fact, I had been concerned that it sort of invited the fact that, oh, well, if it's not ready, it doesn't have to be on there. Correspondingly, the new language absolutely requires that all the attachments be on when the agenda is posted for the final agenda. And sometimes we've gone from one meeting to the next and have asked staff to make some amendments, and that means they're going to have to turn around in a day and a half to have them ready to post when that agenda is posted. At this point, city manager, I still have some pause about this language, but I've been assured by the city manager that administratively there will be an expectation that all the documents will be ready before something goes on a preliminary agenda. And so we could reasonably expect that and give it a year to make sure we can come through with that. And that otherwise he will be challenging staff to get any amended items ready immediately after our Tuesday meeting so that they are posted in full when the agenda is posted. So I wanted to just point that out to folks because I think it's really important. But given that conversation, I'm willing to live with that language and see how we do this year. The other one, though, and with all respect to Councilwoman Ortiz, and I'm really glad that she raised the issue about how the deputy mayor elections go. And I had those experiences too, so I understand, but I'm a little uncomfortable putting the language that's so tight in the ordinance itself. There could be circumstances whereby somebody would want to pass. The city attorney has assured us that it's just a recommendation, that there's preference, but we don't have to do it, but it pushes the question at that point, and whatever the reasons might be that that the body feels that a certain person should be elected that particular term, or that a certain person should be bypassed. I personally, you never know what's going to happen or what the body would be from year to year. I gave it a lot of thought, and I'm just not sure those reasons need to be public. So I would, with that one, and I haven't worked it with anybody, so whatever people think is fine, but I would move to go ahead and take that amendment out from lines 259 to 274. It doesn't really fit where it is. I understand, but I would move to amend and take that particular one out.
Councilwoman Ortiz, is there anything that you would like to share?
It might not have a second, so.
Councilman Lesser.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I would withdraw my motion. I did the motion to accept it in totality as a convenience if there was no disagreement on any of the changes that were being made. Now, as such as there is, I'll withdraw my motion, and we can look for direction of how we want to proceed with the different individual changes that we have made on the policy.
That motion being withdrawn, it seems like we're going to adopt each of the amendments one at a time. So if the city attorney, Councilwoman Hiller.
Well, given, if there isn't any conversation about any of the others, could there be a motion that, just to adopt the whole thing without that piece?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I could.
I would so move.
You would so move?
Sure.
Okay. For the sake of conversation. Okay, so now what we're doing is that we have reapproved, we have a motion on the floor that would approve everything. However, it is striking the deputy mayor portion of the procedure. Are there any comments with regards to this issue?
The red lines.
Deputy mayor.
So my intent was to second the other three being approved as a block, and then we would go back and separately consider the deputy mayor.
That wasn't the motion.
That was not the motion, sir.
Okay.
The motion was to approve all of them.
The last three.
Exactly, and then we would go ahead and take a look at it and just strike, provide the opportunity that if some, in discussion, we could strike the one item if people wanted to do so.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you said you wanted.
My motion was to adopt the whole thing except for that piece.
Yes, that's what we have down.
Okay.
So is that what your second is for?
That's fine. At least we can have a conversation about it.
Okay.
Second. Brendan wants to step out.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for approval of the three main amendments without the portion of the deputy mayor being included. Is there any discussion in regards to this item? Councilman Padilla.
So if we approve that motion, we will not be able to revisit Councilman Ortiz's amendment.
Exactly, and you would have to reconsider. So we would have to vote this down and then go ahead and have discussion with regards to the statements of the deputy mayor. Councilwoman Hiller.
This is just procedural. I mean, we were originally given a document that had a number of changes in it, and those are in here in red. Then there were some amendments that were brought forth in the discussion time, which are the three that we're talking about. So That's why I basically was moving, I thought, to adopt the updates to the entire document. Because they're really, we already have 2 sets in there, and then a third was added last time. And so they've all been put together into one document. So I was just, it wasn't to adopt the package of amendments, it was just to do the whole updated document, because there was more than just those 3.
However, but it was excluding the deputy mayor
Which was
discussion.
a 4th.
Mhm. Councilwoman Clear.
Can I talk about the exclusion of the deputy mayor? Is that time for that?
Yes.
Okay. So you had mentioned that, maybe another council would not want this person, or they would really want this person to be the deputy mayor. And I think that's exactly what we don't want. And I think that's exactly why this is in there. Is so a council can't say, we don't really want that person. And I think this writes it down. No, that's not how you're going to do it. You're not just going to willy-nilly decide that. That concerns me, that a council would be allowed to do that. So I would support this motion to have it included.
The motion, yeah. So you would have to vote it down. So I'll just say for discussion purposes that the statement that Councilwoman Ortiz just added simply states, it doesn't tie any council to any decision. It just states what we have been doing historically. It just says that we would just give preference to the people who have been on the council before. It does not preclude any council member from being nominated. It does not preclude any council member from saying no to the nomination. It's just saying what we do. It's just saying preference will be given, so at the moment that that nomination occurs, then it is known that the individuals that have seniority on the council would be considered, but they are able to decline. So I think that it's just a cleanup in the sense of us having in writing what we're doing. So I would not be supporting the motion, because at this point in time, I think that we do have that procedure that we're following the procedure, but we just don't have it in writing. And furthermore, if we see next year that it doesn't work, the beauty of these policies is that we have them for review every single year. So we're not tying any single council to one thing specifically. Councilmember Mays.
Thank you, Mayor. Based on what you just said, I feel like it doesn't make sense to have it in there. If it doesn't do anything, I don't feel we should alter our rules for rules that aren't really rules. And that's my opinion. So I would support Councilman Hiller's motion.
Councilwoman Clear.
I don't think it's not a rule that's not a rule. I think what it does is kind of hold us responsible for what we've been doing, instead of someone just popping up going, I want to do that way. I just think it's like you said, a cleanup saying, this is what we've been doing, let's keep this going. That's my interpretation.
Any other comments? Or are we ready for voting?
Mayor, would you like the city clerk to read the motion?
Yes, and I was going to say that. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the mayor to, if she would give just her testimony on the night that she was being, that they nominated her. She brought it to my attention, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. That's kind of funny. It's a rule that's not a rule, but it can be a rule. It should be a rule, because 12 years on the bench, I've seen it done a lot of ways, and that's why I stuck that in there. Nothing against anybody, but when we are all voted by our constituents, and our constituents want to see each and every one of us treated fair, and that includes being deputy mayor. And I've heard that time and time again. The person I voted, how come they didn't want it? And that way I can say, well, they declined, or they didn't get that vote, or they're next in seniority line. Because right now, it's just what we do if we choose to do that. So that's why I looked at it. But I would like to hear her testimony. Thank you.
not only with me, but I think that Councilwoman Ortiz could testify that she was on the council for many years and was passed over. And in my experience, the same thing happened. When it was quote unquote my time, there was opposition to me. And had it not been for Councilwoman Ortiz speaking up, I don't think that I would have been deputy mayor. Deputy mayor.
So I guess my question is then, so we've identified a problem, we've written a recommendation. This doesn't solve the problem. All it does is say, this is our tradition in writing, but it doesn't, I mean, if this is just a recommendation, the council can still work around it. I guess I'm not sure what we're doing here. We're not actually solving the problem. We're saying, here is what our tradition is. We're writing it down, but we're not enforcing that. So it's still a rule that's not a rule. We're just documenting what we've generally done, but we're not actually saying you have to do this. So, I mean, I understand the concept behind it, but we're creating a non-rule in our rules. It will not actually enforce a rule. It'll just say, here's our tradition. This is what we've done, but we're not actually going to solve the problem.
Councilwoman Claire?
No, because isn't it, if it's in our rules and in procedures, it's our rule and procedure, period. It's not a rule in the rule book, it's a rule and a procedure. You can change it later, but for now, it's a rule and a procedure, because it's in the rule and procedures.
If I may.
Deputy Mayor.
Right?
My understanding with the comment just was made that we're going to put this in here, but we don't have to follow it, that we're not actually changing anything.
Council member, correction, I think that my statement was misinterpreted. What I'm stating is that should a council member that has priority and seniority choose not to participate and choose to abdicate their opportunity, then they are the ones that have the opportunity to abdicate.
So could somebody explain how the process of preference would work then?
Mayor De La Isla, there was a memo sent out, and it clearly states that there is preference given, but that does not mandate selection of any person. It's preference based on past practice, because we can't force people to vote in a particular way, but providing that guidance saying that this is how it's been done in the past, that we give preference to these individuals, that provides folks at least some guidance as to here's what we've done, particularly new folks that are coming in, just gives them an idea of how it works.
And that's correct, so that's the mechanics, but how would this actually be executed? Would those people automatically be put on the ballot?
No.
Would they be bolded on a ballot?
No.
What I'm wondering is, you know, again, we've created basically a rule, but we don't know how to execute that rule.
Right.
You know, if we're just saying you have preference, but you're not automatically on the ballot or anything like that, then you're not automatically nominated.
Deputy Mayor, folks will have to be nominated, and a second made to that nomination, the same as any election. And the ballot's going to be the same. There's not going to be any boldface type or any italics or any asterisk by anybody's name. It just simply codifies the practice. And you're correct. We can't force people to vote, and that's not anybody is ensured election of the deputy mayor position. They're just provided with preference, and it codifies the fact that that's what they
So we're not
receive.
actually changing how the election is done. We're just simply saying that people that have been on the council longer have preference. So it's a rule that's not really a rule. We're just basically codifying our tradition that we've always had. And that brings me full circle back to, we're not actually changing the rules at all, because we're not changing the way that the voting is executed, that the nominations are done. So I'm still not clear on, I wholeheartedly agree with documenting the tradition so that folks understand, at least, you know, this is the same with trying to document how our TIF process works, so that people from the outside can look at these and understand what we're doing, but we're still not solving the problem other than saying, here is what we think you should do, but we're not, people are not getting automatically nominated, we're not changing the voting process. That would actually solve the problem. Does that make sense, or am I just off my rocker here?
Let's, Councilman Lesser, and then Councilman Padilla.
as many people agree, I'm not real smart, but what I can tell is this doesn't change anything. And I'm fine with, honestly, I'm fine with that as far as the way it codifies it. What I also will say is I'd be honored for anybody on our council right now to be the deputy mayor when I'm on the council. I have full confidence in everybody here. What I wouldn't want to happen in the future, though, is we do have it so it does become to where this person, because they've been here this long, is entitled to become the next deputy mayor. Because I don't believe in that. I believe the best person should get the job. If preference is given, because we have two people who, both of adequate skill, one's been here long enough and time's up, I'm fine with that. But in the event that someone was elected that was not qualified to be deputy mayor, it puts us in a poor position if then we are automatically, by some rule, destined to say, he's been here, he's been on the council, she's been on the council this long, it's their turn to be deputy mayor, period. So, and I don't think, it doesn't do that. So I'm fine, but I think we just need to steer away from making sure that it doesn't do that.
Councilmember Padilla.
Thank you, Aaron. You're getting me totally confused.
Well, I'm just as confused as you are.
You know, but I've been governed by policies and procedures for my entire career, adult life. And you put those in place so that there's fairness across the board. And I've been in positions where, because of seniority and doing all the things I needed to do, I was number one on the list. That didn't mean I had to take that promotion. And a couple times I didn't. When I was ready, I did. And this tells me here is that all we're trying to do is put a procedure in place that keeps it on the same track. I don't like the idea that we would be so loose in what we did that it became a popularity contest. I would rather have some procedure so that maybe that person, because of seniority, isn't qualified, then don't vote for that person. You still have that opportunity, but at least they are given that consideration and benefit of the doubt because of their time on the council. That doesn't mean that they'll get it. So in a sense, like you said, it's a rule, but it's not a rule. It's a rule that we will proceed this way, then we have the choice of whether or not to make that vote or not. And for me, I think it's good to have at least a base to start from. If it doesn't automatically put somebody in a position, that's perfectly all right too, because I think they can say, even though I'm the senior person, I'm not interested in taking that position, and you respect them for that choice. So for me, it's not as confusing as it's beginning to sound. It's just simply take the procedure, give that person, whoever it is, the opportunity to accept or deny, give us the opportunity to approve or deny by our vote. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
So if that is indeed what we want to have, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, because then we're actually solving the problem, I would move to amend it to say that folks that have seniority have the first right of refusal, which means you would actually have to ask them publicly if they wanted the job, and then if they do, so basically it's automatic nomination, and then they have the opportunity to decline or be voted on. That actually changes the rules to do something instead of just codify a tradition.
City Attorney?
If that's a motion that someone wants to make to see if folks want to consider drafting language to do that, we could do it.
Councilmember Ortiz, I would like to address you since this is the
Well,
amendment.
it already does that. Am I correct? It already starts that. Whoever has seniority.
It does not, Councilmember Ortiz, it does not mandate that they will be nominated, that a person who has seniority will be nominated. It states that they will be given preference.
Well, to me, that's the same thing, but.
Which, that's codifying what we've done in the past.
Councilman Lesser?
Do we have a motion on, is there a motion pending?
There is a motion on the table, and the motion on the table at the time is that the approval would include the initial set of the new document with all the amendments with the exclusion of the deputy mayor language.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to call the question.
Okay, so at this point in time, if we were to vote, all the amendments would be put in except for the deputy mayor language. We're all clear on what we're, the question was called.
I made a motion before the question was called.
It's your motion, oh.
No. So, and there was not an opportunity for a second.
It was not seconded.
It was not seconded.
Well, but no one was given the opportunity.
Right.
Is there a second for,
So my motion was to add the original language back about deputy mayor, but modify it in such a way so that those folks get an automatic nomination.
is there a second for that motion? Okay, so there is a second, so that we have now, so now we have an amendment. The amendment states that the language would be added that would state that now the deputy mayors would have, the individuals with seniority be automatically nominated so that they could have the right of refusal. Am I clear on that motion?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point in time, we will proceed to the vote with regards to that amendment. Clerk, if you could please state the amendment once more.
It's my understanding that he wants to add the language back for deputy mayor and include language that would automatically nominate his senior person.
Instead of receiving preference.
Person.
Do we need language, or are we good to go?
That's the language, that, individuals with seniority will be automatically.
What, Mayor, what I've done kind of on the fly is starting in, on page 7, line 260, if I'm understanding what the motion is correctly, it'd be, in addition, council members who have served the longest period of time and have not previously served as deputy mayor will be automatically nominated to the extent they express an interest in serving in that capacity. If 2 or more council members have served in the same length of time and never served as deputy mayor, all such members who express an interest in serving as deputy mayor will be automatically nominated. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Councilwoman Heller.
Just to help with that, I think that, I didn't go that far, but there's so much language in the amendment that's in here right now that it's as long as our how to behave in the council chambers section, which is the longest section we have. If his abbreviated motion and what the city attorney said at first would be that, in addition, individuals with seniority will automatically be nominated unless they decline, period, I think we'll take care of Councilwoman Ortiz's desire without needing to go through all that additional language. Would it, if, city attorney?
The first piece talks about council members who have served, meaning 1. If 2 or more serve, that's another. So,
But anybody with seniority is automatically nominated unless they decline, takes care of all of that, I think, then people can vote. It's either going to be just one person, and other people can be nominated as well, from what you said in your explanation. Just make sure that anybody with seniority is nominated.
do we want to take a recess to talk about this so we can get it right, or I guess I want to make sure that we're doing it correctly.
I think, okay, so, yeah, let's take a 5-minute recess. This would allow legal to go ahead. One of the things that we never support is having policy on the fly. So this is part of our governing body rules.
Could we straighten this out and bring it back next week, maybe? So we can, I mean, yeah, 1st of March meeting? Would that be possible? Is it something we need to do tonight?
Could we defer the item until later tonight and revisit it? I guess I need to get recognized.
We can defer it. Where would you like to place it on the agenda?
It seems like there's consensus, people saying break, because the meeting has been policy and procedure very heavy. So I think that everybody's brain probably needs a second to reset. So I would call for a 5-minute recess. This would both allow for the council to just refresh for a minute and also have the opportunity for staff to come back with some language for the council to consider. So it is 7:44, and we are recessing for a 5-minute break.